Okay, this unit here, which is one of our last ones, is the financial unit. Now, the financial unit is actually quite important for life skills because all of us somewhere along the time are going to make money and invest it, whether it's just even our savings account. And most of us are going to somewhere along buy something that we have to put on credit, whether that's a car or maybe even a house. So the first thing we're going to look at is a review of many items that you would have done in grade 11. And the first formula we're going to review is what we have called the simple interest formula. Okay, it was a very small formula and it has the variables I equals PRT. Now, you may have remembered what those letters stood for, those variables, but you may have not. So I is what we're calculating using this formula, and what it is interest. It is not an interest rate, it is actually interest as far as dollars go. I invest this amount at this for this length of time at this interest rate. How much will I have made in interest? That's what this formula is calculating for us. P is the variable that stands for principal, so the initial amount that we're putting in. R is the interest rate, and it is as a decimal, so make sure that you give it as a decimal. And to do that, you either move the decimal place over to the left 2 places, or you can divide by 100. Either way will give it to you. And the last variable in the formula is t. Now, the reason t has a red line is because if there's anything that's going to give you difficulty with this formula, it's going to be the t. The reason being is that it stands for time as a fraction of 1 year. Okay, so time is a fraction of 1 year. So let's take a look at what that means as far as time goes. So if you look at the right, I have a little box there, and we have time periods in a year. Well, most of you understand that the number of days in a year are 365, 52 weeks, and 12 months. And how many years are there in a year? Obviously, one. That was kind of a silly question for me to ask. Now, what that means when I'm actually doing my calculation for my variable t in the formula is, for instance, if it says 2 years, well, that question I said to you, how many years are there in a year? And you said one. So what's happening here is we're taking the 2 years, so the t would be 2, and I could divide it by 1 if I wanted to. 14 months, well, there are 12 months in a year, so I'm going to go 14 divided by 12. So I'm always using these ones in this rectangle as what these numbers are being divided by. So 14 divided by 12. 41 weeks, 52 weeks in a year, so 41 divided by 52. Right? So one more thing before we actually get working on an actual word question, and let's take a look at the amount of an investment. Our formula, the simple interest formula, only calculates the interest. When we're talking about the amount of an investment, it includes the interest that we earn as well as the principal. And this is true whether I'm using the simple interest formula or the compound interest formula. So it has, I mean, this is a little formula, whether you remember the formula or just the understanding that the amount includes my principal that I had started with and the interest that I earned. So let's take a look at this first question that we have. So we have Jeff, invest $500 into an account that pays 4% per year simple interest. Okay, so simple interest, that's important. If he leaves the money invested for 15 months, what is the amount of his investment? Okay, so there's that amount of investment again, which, if I take a look, relates back to this simple formula here. However, I still have to, so if I look at this, I know I'm going to need A equals PI. Now, my problem is I don't know what I is, so we have to calculate that. So simple interest formula. So what we're going to do first of all is I'm going to copy down the simple interest formula. And I know that it is, just hold on, I'm getting my little writing pen here. I know that it is I equals PRT. And sometimes what I like to do is I like to put my variables down the side. So P, R, and T. So when I look at my principal, well, if I go back to the question, it says Jeff invests $500. So that is his principal that he started with. So that's going to be 500. R stands for rate, so he pays 4% year per year simple interest. So 4%, and if I divide that by 100, I end up with decimal zero 0.04. And my time, well, 15 months, but I can't just put down 15 because I have to divide it by the number of months in 1 year, which is 12. Now you can leave the 15 divided by 12 the way that is and put it into the formula, or you can actually calculate it over here if you want as well. And that works out to 1.25. So now I have all this information and I can substitute it into our simple interest formula, and we would end up with 500. The rate was 0.04. And finally, our interest rate was, sorry, our time was 1.25. And I'm just going to pause this and move that over a tiny bit. Okay, and now if I take my calculator and I actually calculate what that is, and we end up that Jeff earns 25. So he's actually making $25 in interest. Now, that wasn't the question that they asked me, however. They asked me the amount of his investment. So for the amount of the investment, I literally have to take this formula that, oops, that we had over here from before. And just hold on, I'll make that disappear. So if I take that and move it here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to continue. No, I don't need to learn that. Continue our question. And his principal was originally $500, and he made $25 in interest. So the amount of his investment is $525. Okay. Now, because it's a word question, I should also have a therefore statement, and I believe I do have one down here somewhere. And no, it has disappeared. So I'm going to type it just because I know that my writing with my pen is not quite as nice. So Jeff's investment would be worth $525. Okay. So the next little mini lesson is going to include the compound interest formula. So this was the simple, and the next one's going to be the compound.